Welcome to the Next Level interview series, where we combine expert strategies with powerful automation to help take your business to the next level. I'm Kim Roth. I'm a business automation strategist and the founder of Allura Connections and Tech Simple Solutions. I spent over 20 years in corporate IT, where my number one responsibility was to make everyone else's job easier. And I love that I've been able to take those skills and build a business where I can help other service providers automate and eliminate some of those manual processes that they've been doing for years. And so, with this series, I'm on a mission to help you simplify your software, streamline your systems, and scale without having to hire a huge team. And today I'm so excited to welcome Kim Parkinson. She is going to share her brilliant strategy for turning podcasts into client magnets, a method that has become incredibly powerful, especially when combined with strategic automation. So, Kim, welcome. I'm so excited to have you here. And before we dive too much into your podcast strategy, could you share a bit about you and your background and how you discovered the power of podcasting?
Thank you so much, Kim. Yes, so Kim Parkinson here, podcast growth coach and producer. And I actually started this podcasting journey many, many years ago. First of all, I've been an Audible member since 2006. That's the crazy part. So I've been listening to audiobooks and podcasts since then. And also, when I owned a brick and mortar craft store, I actually also had my own TV show. So I was able to be executive producer there and learn some of the ropes. And when that store closed down, I went into a corporate job that I hated. And during 2020, as many of us did, we decided that we were going to strike out on our own. But I had already done it before because I had a brick and mortar. And when I was just like flummoxed about like what am I going to be doing, it was actually my youngest son who is now 22, and he said to me, "Mom, you're an avid Audible listener, podcast listener. I think you'd be excellent at this." And we've been musically inclined, the family, my entire life. I played the clarinet for, I think, 12 years in high school. And, well, not just 12 years in high school, but
A long high school career.
ending in high school. And so, and we go to Singo every Wednesday. So musically inclined. And so I think it was just the next step. My husband's a musician. We already had microphones in the house. We already had mixing boards in the house. We already had audio soundboards and everything in the house. And it was just like light dawned over Marblehead. I was like, you are right, Bryce. I'm going to go in this direction. And I have not looked back. I absolutely love it. And I keep pushing myself to make my clients and my podcast better and better and better. And not that I've finally reached that stage, but I'm at a point right now where I'm so happy with the growth I'm seeing clients in right now and my own podcast in right now. So, yeah, it's kind of like the journey so far.
I think it's amazing to see the power of a podcast, being able to put your experience out there where it's easy for people to listen on the go. I mean, I was an avid podcast listener when I drove to work, and now that I don't drive to work, I don't listen as much except when I'm on a walk but even then, if I'm following somebody, it's listening when I'm doing the dishes or folding clothes or sweeping the floor. Like, just being able to have like having the whole radio in my pocket.
Yeah.
Being able to tune in to whoever I want to. So yeah, I love the of a podcast. And where I know you've helped clients with is really using that podcast and making it into a way to attract clients. And so what made you realize that a lot of podcasts were missing that piece? They weren't converting clients.
Yeah, this actually starts with a client that I did have. She was repetitively interviewing people, and we weren't seeing any growth in her podcast. This was back in 2023, and she was an amazing speaker. She was already, I think, in her late 60s, early 70s, and she had years of wisdom, years of knowledge, years of stories to share. And she just wasn't growing. And I was really like very confused as to what it was until I asked her a question one day and I said, you're doing all these interviews. Are they sharing? Do they have a podcast? Can you get on their podcast? And she said to me, they don't even know what a podcast is. I was shocked. And that just snowballed into the whole idea of wait a second. First of all, let's back up. How are you getting them on your show? And how are you talking to them about this? Are they sharing it all? In many cases, they didn't even have social media, or if they did, they weren't because they didn't know how or anything like that. And so it really just brought me down this whole path of like, okay, let's stop all of the interviews and let's showcase you. Let's showcase your authority, your wisdom, your stories, where you came from, because ultimately you want them to follow you and not follow them anyway, because they don't even know what it is. So it really was her particular story that really kind of got that ball moving for me
Mhm.
and making sure that I could really hone in on making sure that you own your authority and you own the information that you are giving to people directly in their ears every week.
Mhm. Yeah. And then do a lot of your clients, do they interview? Like, and using that as a strategic way to bring like clients in, whether it's clients, connectors, collaborators, like there's a strategy behind who you're interviewing too.
There is a strategy behind it. And I'm going to tell you, I have a couple of different podcast episodes that I would suggest people doing. I would suggest they do, if they're doing 4 to 5 episodes a month, depending on the week, I would say do at least 2 to 3 episodes, depending on how many of the month, 2 to 3 solos. Have those be building your authority, sharing your modality, sharing how you want to do stuff, how they should, just sharing about you, sharing your wisdom, sharing what you know, sharing your expertise.
Mhm.
And then one of those episodes a month should be a coaching style episode. And
Mhm.
by coaching, I suggest that you ask somebody on that maybe needs your help. And this could be a free call. As a matter of fact, I do these all the time on my podcast now. I actually been doing one a week for the rest of the summer. So you can listen there too. And basically, they come on and they talk to me about their podcast, and I give them a couple of tips on how they can grow it. And what it's doing is it's showcasing my authority. They're getting some free advice, they're getting free growth. But at the same time, I'm also telling and showing the listeners how I actually work, how my brain is working. They're listening to how that I'm communicating with the client, even if they aren't a client, they're just a call. But it's just a great way to showcase your expertise and your authority with someone else. And then the last episode should be some type of a value episode with a guest, and it doesn't have to be every time. I actually haven't had a guest yet onto my show. I'm planning on bringing a couple on starting in September,
Mhm.
but I really want them to be value driven, right? So somebody that has something to do with the podcasting industry that can really expand on them. And it's a conjunction, it's a companion. It's not necessarily someone that is going to talk about the same thing that you talk about, but something that's going to add value to the client in that particular niche you're in. So,
Right. Right.
yeah.
I think I mean, there's so many ways to work with people and collaborate. It's just a matter of really just opening your eyes and chatting about, what are the possibilities? How can I help you? And it automatically comes back as to how you can help me. And
Yes.
a podcast gives that opportunity.
Yeah.
So how, um, so I'm putting a podcast out there. How do I use it to attract people to me? How do I share about it? What do I tell them the next step is? What's that call to action supposed to be?
Yeah. So, my suggestion here is because the power of our voice showcases our emotions, right? Whether or not we're happy, whether we're sad, whether we're excited, and all of that. So, our listeners are listening and they can hear that, they can feel that, and then they're automatically attracted to you or repelled, depending. And that's okay too. Not everybody is for us, right? So, that's okay. We're good with the repelling as well. And so you want those aligned clients. And if they are an aligned client, what I suggest is to send them in the show notes to one link, in maximum two, but don't send them an entire in the show notes. Don't send them to 15 different links because you're going to confuse them. You want one call to action that maybe you are offering inside of your episode, and then maybe you might have another or the same call to action at the end of the episode. But I would suggest only doing one or two links, and that link should always be to whatever you want them to go to first, and then to your newsletter.
Mm,
Sign up for your newsletter. Those are the only two that you should have. Whatever you're selling this week and your newsletter. And by the way, as far as selling this week, when you're doing a podcast, you should be selling for 8 weeks in a row, the same thing. Yeah, because you never know, especially now in the summertime. Summertime is a really slow time for podcast listeners. You'd think like they have plenty of time, oh, they're sitting on the beach, they're going to listen. No, they're going to listen to the waves. So it's a slow time. Whereas September, they're going to stop binging again. And then November 15th, 16th, they're going to stop and they're going to be like so busy for the holidays.
mhm,
And then January, they're like, I got to get back on track. And you have an active audience from January through May. Make the most. Your podcast will actually, if you are already set up for success in everything else, your podcast will just grow, grow, grow during those couple of really big months. So January through May, and then September through mid-November or so.
mhm.
So
So going back to like that call to action, are we, or do you recommend like a small offer? Like just, like a $27 or a $47 offer along with sending
I
people
don't
a freebie or your newsletter? Is that what you meant by that?
Yeah, I don't think it necessarily you have to do a small offer.
Okay.
I don't think you have to. If that's what you want to start them with, absolutely. But if you are offering them value and you're offering them more information about you all the time inside of your podcast, you could offer them the whole shebang and just be like, listen, I am having this next cohort, and the cohort is 1997. Jump in now because it starts September 1st.
Mhm.
And that could be a great segue, especially if you take the content of your episodes and you kind of revolve it around how you bring value in that offer that you're giving. That's like almost like a commercial every single time,
Yeah.
right? Every single time you release a podcast episode, it's almost like a little ad for your product, for whatever you're
Mhm.
going to give them.
Because it's almost like taking your podcast and making it into your launch sequence because you have
Yes.
really, really nurtured them. If you're looking at this 8 week cycle, you've really nurtured them these full 8 weeks to give them information about you and what you do. And it becomes a natural step for them to want to know, okay, what is the next step to work with you? And then
Yeah.
putting that offer out there makes it be like, oh, okay, because I've already like I feel like I know her.
Yeah, that's the important part
Yeah.
too, right? Is they get to, if anything, it's opposite for us as the podcaster. It's like they know everything about me and you're like, I don't know a thing about you. Let's have a conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's make sure we jive both ways.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But you're still, hopefully you have done your due diligence in your attracting and your repelling, and
Mhm,
so hopefully you are only bringing in those aligned clients anyway.
mhm,
So
mhm. Yeah, that's a brilliant strategy, and I know I've seen that, many times with clients in really whatever way you're creating content is when you're looking at it in that strategic way for people to get to learn who you are and what you do and how you can bring value to them so that you make it like this it's an easy next step to see how they can then work with you or collaborate with you or connect somebody to you. Like all of those three pieces are always there in whoever we meet most of the time.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Yeah, you just never know who is going to be listening at any time because it's a global thing, right? A podcast is evergreen and it's out there
Mhm.
all across the globe. So you never know who's listening, who's going to be interested, who's going to be the next person to walk in your door. I mean, how beautiful is that to know that your storefront is global and people can just walk in, listen, and be like, yeah, where's the coffee in my chair? Because I'm going to stay.
And that is one thing that I've found so amazing about the online space is I've had clients in London. I've had clients in Australia. I've had a client in Bali. And it's just kind of like when I say it to people, like my mom, especially, like, because she's like, do you have to go somewhere to meet with your clients? I'm like, no. I was like, this would be a long trip to meet my Australian client. And she's like, you work with someone in Australia? I'm like, yeah, mom. Like,
Yeah.
it's really made the world smaller, um, into where we can make those bigger connections.
Oh, definitely. And also brings together that 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, right? So you just realize, oh my gosh, you know that person? Well, I know that person and they know each other. And yeah, it's
Uh-huh.
so crazy when you realize that the world isn't as big as we think it could be.
Yeah. Yeah. It has definitely gotten smaller over the years, that's for sure. I know you have a framework that you use when you walk people through setting up a podcast. Could you walk us through those 4 stages and explain a little bit? Because I think it applies in various types of content.
Yeah. So, one of the things that I always take a look at is your podcast name because podcast players will pull
Mhm.
from the SEO in your podcast name first. So, if your podcast name actually really defines who you are talking to and what you're talking about, you're going to be more likely to be finding your aligned client, finding that person, right? So, if my suggestion here is keyword for keyword type
Mhm.
of deal, right? So for instance, mine is podcasting for spiritual women. So we're talking about podcasting and specifically for spiritual women.
Mhm.
So not that it can't be, but if you are woo, I'm all about you.
And that rhymes.
Yeah, really good at that. And then the second piece that we always look at is your description, right? So we want to make sure that your description also shoved lots of keywords in there. And shoved might be a non-gentle word, but realistically, we want to start it with a keyword and we want to just kind of continue with the keywords all the way throughout. Yes, you can put your name in there. No, you do not need to put your podcast name in there again, but you definitely want to make sure that you have lots of descriptors about what you do, who you help, and how you help them. Because that again that's the second way podcast players pick up when somebody is searching for a topic they want to listen to. So first is the podcast name, second is the podcast description, and then third is actually the podcast titles. And I'm not talking about the show notes themselves, I'm talking about the titles. And those should always start with a keyword, unless they start with how to, the top five, nurturing, something like that. That's really, people love those. People love how to's. They love, the top fives or top five tips or things like that. And anything other than those, it should start with a really powerful keyword. It does get a little cumbersome because it's like, okay, I've used this keyword a couple times. So shake it up. Don't try not to make the same keyword in every, start with every single one. So that's a good way to look at it, kind of shake them up a little. And I would also take a look at your podcast cover art and make sure that the words that are on the cover art are easy to read and easy to recognize. You
Mhm.
don't have to put your photo on it, but I would definitely make sure that it is easy to read. It should say the name of your podcast for sure. Doesn't need to say your name at all on it if you don't want it to. Or if you do, it's okay if those are smaller because people aren't searching necessarily for your name. They could be, but you're at listed as the as the host anyway, so you'll
Mhm.
definitely be searchable that way. But make sure in the podcast cover art, because if you know, like the computers or the phone screens are tiny, so make sure that it's really easy to read what it is that you talk about and who you are talking to. And that way, people can easily recognize those right away. So,
Yes, because the attraction starts from the very beginning.
very beginning. Yeah.
And so, having those tips in the forefront of your mind when you're building, and like I said, everything comes back to a strategy. There's a strategy behind everything. And you could have a really pretty, fancy cover, but if somebody can't read it, it doesn't do its job. I mean, I think
No,
we've all seen the memes or the different, pictures about with businesses and how placement of words doesn't always
or
reflect
font.
the business. Yes, or font, and you're like,
I don't know that that's what that says. Is that what that says?
what that says, but it's going to say that now forever in my mind.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. Yeah. Font is super important. Colors are important. Highlighting certain words. If you are specifically talking to women entrepreneurs, but it's not really part of your title, like I could do podcasting for spiritual women entrepreneurs. I could put a little banner there and put women in between because that is who I'm speaking to. So you could do additional features on your cover art that maybe the name isn't reflective of.
Yeah.
And also, you do not have to keep the name and the description and the titles the same forever.
Mm.
So if you decide 3 months in that you want to tweak things, do it.
Yeah.
It's okay. Yeah. But I would also suggest give it a good 3 months to see if it works.
Mhm.
It isn't an easy fix. Like I have had a client change her name and her description and have, I think it was 881% increase in downloads over a weekend.
Yeah.
But that is unusual. I will say that is not the norm. Typically, it takes a little bit of time for that to happen. But yeah, whatever reason that weekend, people were really searching for what she wrote in there, and we took a look. It wasn't bots, so that's also important to note too. So
Mhm. I think the key thing that you said there was that you don't have to be perfect to start. You don't have to
no,
have it all figured out in order to start because I've had many clients where they're trying to put absolutely everything together before they even want to take on a client. Like, well, I need to have all of these things in place. I need to have a freebie. I need to know what my offer is. I need to have a website. I need to have the podcast. I need to have it all. And you don't have to have it all to start. You
yeah,
don't have to have it
yeah.
all figured out to start. Everything is changeable. You're not stuck either.
No, no. Even like I mentioned, even with the podcast name itself, you're not stuck. You can add an extension on, or you could add a pre-extension on or pre-addition on if you wanted to. If you really love the name of it, you could do that.
Mhm.
There's additional pieces where maybe you could add some keywords to your name in the hosting section. So there's some other like little juicy bits and pieces that you could do to tweak it. Myself, I actually, like I mentioned, I started my podcast in June. And yesterday I went in and I looked at my podcast description and I was like, no, I'm changing this. This isn't strong enough. And I changed it.
Yeah.
And you know what? Hopefully better for it. I'll know in like a month or so, month or two.
Yep.
But I wasn't happy with it after I had done,
Mhm.
16 episodes. I was like, no, I need this to be stronger. I need this to be
Yeah.
more direct. And
Yeah.
so nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
Just
Or
helps.
yeah. Or sometimes when you look at it and you're like, what was I thinking when I thought that was a good idea?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I want to tie this back into how we can automate different pieces and how we can use high level for podcasters. And so one of my favorite ways that I've set up a few times with clients is creating a blog for their podcast. And so I know what we've done is, taking that transcription and putting it in the blog, rewrite, having AI rewrite it for a blog, pointing it back to the podcast episodes, having the link for the newsletter or a freebie or something. Is there anything else that I'm missing in there that they should be adding in order to bring people back to their website and bring them back into signing up to work with them and starting that customer journey? Like, what else do you
So
recommend for show notes and things like that?
yeah. So, one thing also, whenever you're setting up your hosting platform, always take advantage of the section where it says in the actual host. So, this is not something that you would see per episode, but it is like as you set up. Make sure that your URL to your website is there because Apple will pre populate that for you. Spotify will pre-populate that for you, and it's just a part of your show. So if anybody goes to your show and just looks, even if they've never listened to an episode, there's a little website link right there already done, and they can click on that. So my suggestion here might be to send them directly to your newsletter sign-up page, or send them directly to your blog page or your freebie page, or whatever it is that's most important. And again, you can change it often.
Test it, see what works.
Yeah, exactly. Keep going. And then a lot of different platforms. Now, I host on Captivate, but I also have clients that host on Libsyn and Buzzsprout, and they all will allow you to put in different links, like additional links. So if somebody clicks on one of your episodes, there could be like find me on Apple or find me on Spotify or find me on Overcast. And then there's can also be a little link that's you put in a custom link that goes directly to your freebie or directly to your newsletter, or again, directly to your latest offer. And
Mhm.
again, can also be changed out very often. Nothing is permanent. So that's the beautiful part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, when you take advantage of that, like giving people the next step in order for them to sign up for a newsletter, get your freebie, get a free training, get your offers, it starts that process. Like now they've taken one step closer to being in your world. And and that's one thing I really like about high level is that okay, now we've got them on our email list. Now we can continue to nurture them. Next, I'm gonna open up my calendar and see if I can, get people on a call with me. And then from a call, they become a client or, they join my group program or, the possibilities are endless once you start to capture their name and email and being able to take those next steps with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. In your podcast, you're really nurturing them. You're showing them who you truly are. You're allowing them into your world. But really, there are very few people that actually can close a sale in a podcast. You really want them to make that next step into your newsletter, into your world somehow, whether or not that's a link or whatnot. And that's where they're going to start making the purchases is from those links. Your podcast shows them who you are, lets them listen to what you're really capable of, and really just gives that authority.
Yeah.
And then the next step is the links. So that's where you're going to need that go high level. That's where you're going to need
That's where you
it.
need the automations. Yeah, 'cause
Yes.
you don't want, to manually having to load people into a nurture sequence
Mm-mm.
and manually communicate back and forth with them. You want some sort of automation there to help you nurture all of these amazing people that you are attracting to you.
Yeah. And don't forget to tag them, podcast listener.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And also,
Actually,
go ahead.
I was just going to mention you could actually, in a lot of the different hosting, you could actually send them to a specific page that you might have set up for your nurture sequence or for your freebie, which I've actually done myself. And then specifically that new person on my newsletter list came from my podcast and tag them podcast listener. And so, give them some kudos,
Yeah.
give them some
Yeah. So it's
freebies or something.
Yeah, so it's having that same landing page for it's the same freebie or the same newsletter that you're bringing them into. It's just a different link that you're using for your podcast or you're using for YouTube. And then you know where they came in at, and then yeah, and you can tag them, and that gives you the opportunity to also tweak those emails a little bit more specifically for them, and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
sending them into different places because of you know where they came from, you know what attracted them to you. So
Mm.
I
I know
love
how
that.
powerful is that to know that, right?
Yeah.
You know, oh, they were a podcast listener and I'm going to give them something special.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. So, thank you so much for sharing your incredible insights. I appreciate you so much. You shared so many actionable strategies that, anybody who is a podcaster or thinking about starting a podcast, that they can look at this and be like, all right, I can do this. I have the steps. So,
yeah.
if you want to take the next steps with Kim, her information will be below. You can check out her podcast, Podcasting for Spiritual Women, and follow her trail. Get on her email list. Check out what she's doing. Follow her on social. You will not be disappointed, that's for sure. So, and if you're watching and you never want to miss another episode in this next level interview series, click the link that comes with this video to get on my email list. And even if you don't want one more freebie, you can always reply back to any email I send you and ask me anything. And I know Kim is the exact same way. If you have questions, reach out to us. We are happy to help. And I want you to remember that business growth doesn't mean more complexity or longer hours. Strategic automations and strategic content can work for you and take your business to the next level. So, thank you for joining us today.